Welcome to the deep dive. Pull up a chair and get comfortable because today we are exploring a framework of ideas that, well, it completely flips how we usually think about human fragility, trust, and even cosmic justice.
It really does. It's quite a ride.
Yeah, and we are looking at a deeply profound piece of writing from a publication called The Hermeneutical Quill. It was published on February 28, 2026 by an author known as B.V. Thomas, and the title is simply From the Father.
Right, in all caps, which I think sets the tone right away.
Exactly. And our mission today is to take this incredibly dense theological meditation and extract the underlying narrative from it. We're going to explore the unshakable nature of trust, an ancient prehistoric rebellion, and this really fascinating concept that human weakness, the very thing you and I usually try to hide, might actually be the ultimate secret weapon in a universal conflict.
It is a sweeping piece of architecture, and I want to establish right up front, even if you do not consider yourself a theologian or even particularly religious, there's just a massive amount to chew on here.
Oh, absolutely.
The concepts offer a really robust lens for understanding trust and how we view our own vulnerabilities. It takes ideas that society usually treats as sheer liabilities and reframes them as profound strengths.
Right. Now, before we jump into the deep end, I do want to make a quick note about how we are approaching this material today. Our role here is to be your guides through these intricate theological concepts exactly as they are presented in the source material.
Right, we're looking at the blueprint.
Yes, exactly. We are here to map out the fascinating architecture of these ideas to see how they connect. We aren't here to endorse, debate, or preach the specific religious doctrines themselves. We are simply exploring the landscape that has been built for us impartially to see what insights we can pull from it.
And it is quite a landscape.
It really is.
Okay,
let's unpack this. The meditation starts by anchoring everything to what is called the ultimate source, or the fountainhead. The Father is described as the unbegotten, unchanging source of all life. The Greek term used in the text is archa, which is framed as the bedrock from which absolutely everything else proceeds.
Yeah, that concept of the archa is the structural foundation for everything else we are going to talk about today. Now, the text is careful to clarify that identifying the Father as the archa doesn't mean he is somehow, more God than the Son or the Spirit.
Right.
It is a distinction of origin, not of essence or value. So from this unbegotten Father, the Son is eternally begotten and the Spirit eternally proceeds. And they all share one identical essence in what is referred to as perfect perichoresis.
Okay, I have to stop you there because when I was reviewing the source notes, I hit the word perichoresis and my brain just about short-circuited.
It's a heavy one.
Yeah,
Right?
that is a massive seminary term. What does that actually look like for those of us who don't read ancient Greek over our morning coffee?
It is definitely a $10 word, but if we strip away the academic varnish, the concept is incredibly elegant. It is often likened to a divine dance.
A dance, like a perfectly choreographed waltz or something.
Kind of, yeah. But more like a perfect continuous state of sharing space without stepping on each other's toes. Imagine three distinct melodies playing at the exact same time.
Right.
Instead of clashing into a wall of noise, they weave together to form one perfect continuous chord. The Father, Son, and Spirit exist in this constant, unbroken participation of shared life and love. There is no division, but there is also no loss of individual identity.
So they're totally unified, but they remain distinct.
Exactly. And the reason this matters for you, the listener, isn't just to pass a theology quiz. It sets up the bedrock for the entire argument about the nature of trust.
Because the dance is eternal.
Yes. Because this dance is eternal and unshakable, it means the core nature of this source is entirely stable. There is a great phrase used in the text to describe this. God's love is not weather-dependent.
I highlighted that exact phrase.
Yeah.
It really separates this idea of a grounded, eternal source from how we usually experience relationships. I mean, in human terms, love is often very weather dependent.
Oh, absolutely.
If I'm having a stressful day, my patience with my friends wears thin. My goodness is reactive to my environment.
Precisely. We constantly monitor the people around us to see what mood they're in before we decide how much we can trust them in that moment.
Walking on eggshells.
Exactly. It is exhausting. What's fascinating here is that the piece identifies this understanding of an unshakable bedrock as the absolute non-negotiable prerequisite for real trust.
Because if the foundation is moving,
Right. If the source you are trusting in can be shaken, altered, or threatened by a bad mood or a surprising event, then your trust is always going to be laced with anxiety. You're always waiting for the other shoe to drop.
because everything that begins can be threatened, and everything caused can be shaken. But the Father is neither.
Right. Because his goodness is his very nature, and because he simply us to distrust him is essentially to misread reality itself. Now, the text acknowledges that this distrust grieves the heart of God, but not in the way we might assume.
Yeah, it's not like a booming, angry sort of grief.
Exactly. It's not wounded pride. It's not a booming, how dare you doubt my power kind of thing. Instead, it is compared to the tender ache of a parent whose child is panicking while already holding their hand.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This framework takes this beautiful, tender image of a panicking child and uses it to completely redefine our understanding of human weakness.
It does.
There's a very sharp distinction made here, pointing out that a moment of panic is not the same thing as a settled suspicion or a fundamental unbelief in character.
It is an incredibly liberating distinction. Think about a toddler who loses sight of their parent in a grocery store for exactly 2 seconds.
Coital meltdown.
Complete meltdown. They are terrified. But that panic isn't because they think their parent is an evil person who abandoned them on purpose. It is just a momentary overwhelm of their fragile nervous system.
Right.
The source material uses the classic imagery of a bruised reed. A bruised reed bends under pressure. It looks incredibly fragile and close to snapping, but the crucial detail is that it remains attached to the root. It is still drawing life.
So in this view, a child is weak precisely because it trusts. Human weakness isn't framed as a defect of faith, it's actually the expression of it.
Exactly. When you have a trembling faith or when you experience momentary panic, you aren't fundamentally failing. You are just experiencing your own physical and emotional limits. Even when we stumble, the response from the source isn't trust me or else, it is simply I am with you.
Which naturally brings up how this idea contrasts the Old Covenant with the New Covenant, specifically regarding how trust is formed.
The ontological trust part.
Yes, ontological trust. Under the Old Covenant, trust was something that was commanded. Israel was told to trust and love God with all their heart and strength. But there's a brutal truth acknowledged here. Trust cannot be commanded into existence.
You really can't just order someone to trust you. If I walked up to a stranger on the street and yelled, trust me with your life right now, it would have the exact opposite effect.
Wait, but if trust can't be commanded, doesn't that make the Old Covenant seem like a setup for failure? Why even have the command to trust in the first place if human beings are fundamentally incapable of muscling their way into it?
That is the pivotal question. The framework suggests that the command was holy and right. It showed what a perfect relationship should look like. But because the human heart remained fundamentally unchanged, the effort to achieve it through sheer willpower royally failed.
It just highlighted the gap.
Exactly. It revealed the limits of human effort. It showed that we cannot deadlift our way into spiritual perfection. And this is where the new covenant changes the paradigm entirely. Instead of trust being a labor or a technique you have to master, it becomes something that is begotten.
Meaning it is born into you.
Right. The Spirit is put within the believer, uniting our inherent weakness to Christ's perfect trust. So trust becomes as natural and involuntary as breath to lungs, or as a vine trusting the root it grows from. You don't have to remind your lungs to process oxygen. It is a shared life, a shared nature.
Which introduces one of the most compelling concepts in this entire deep dive, the internal lean. The idea is that because love begets trust, because perfect love displaces fear, a person develops this default orientation.
The lean.
Yeah, the lean. Even in the middle of storms or grief or deep confusion, there's an internal lean toward the Father.
And that lean is described as a quiet triumph. It means you can be afflicted but not crushed, perplexed but not driven to despair. For you, listening to this, consider how profoundly this shifts the perspective on your own personal struggles.
It changes everything.
It really does. It asks you to reframe your moments of deep doubt or sorrow. Instead of viewing those moments as a failure of your character or a collapse of your faith, you can see that internal lean, that underlying orientation toward the source, even when you are crying out in pain, as proof that you are securely anchored.
Wow.
Worldly sorrow curves inward and collapses on itself. But godly sorrow, even when it is agonizing, bends Godward.
It is a complete reframing of fragility. Stop trying to white-knuckle your faith, because trust isn't a muscle you flex, it's a breath you take. And this idea of weakness actually sets the stage for the massive, epic pivot the meditation takes next.
Right, because we zoom way out now.
Exactly. Because this isn't just about personal internal peace. The scope zooms all the way out to a cosmic scale, taking us into this wild pre-Eden backstory. Long before the garden, long before humanity, we are told about a rebellion stirring in hidden heavenly places. We are introduced to the morning star, Hallel, and the ancient twisting spirit of Leviathan, driven entirely by pride.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see God's ultimate judicial wisdom on display. And for those who might not know, Leviathan in ancient Near Eastern literature was often a symbol of ultimate chaos, the great untamable sea monster.
A terrifying force.
Absolutely. The author is using this to represent a prideful, chaotic rebellion that predates humanity. The text describes this anointed covering cherub, a high-ranking overseer whose heart became corrupted by his own splendor. He was cast down, but the shadow of his accusation lingered. It left the heavens not fully clean. It echoed across the ages, sowing doubt. So God is faced with this cosmic rebellion, this lingering, toxic accusation of pride.
And what does God do? He doesn't just vaporize the enemy with overwhelming absolute power. I mean, he could have just snapped his fingers.
He absolutely could have.
But instead, he chooses a courtroom.
Yeah.
And the arena he selects for this ultimate showdown is Earth. The exact domain that had been tainted, the very garden that had fallen under the shadow of this rebellion. And into this corrupted territory, God places humanity. And the phrase used to describe us here is so striking: contemptible dust. We were formed from the dirt.
Think about the absolute insult of that to a being of pure, shining pride. To an ancient, powerful spirit, humanity looks like nothing more than animated mud.
Just weak.
We are fragile, we bleed, we get tired. God places these fragile image bearers right in the middle of the enemy's former stronghold. To a spirit obsessed with power and perfection, this looks like ultimate weakness. It looks incredibly vulnerable, almost foolish. But the argument here is that this apparent weakness concealed destined glory.
And that leads to the trap. The enemy itches to strike, wanting to corrupt and seize this territory forever. He lunges at the heel, thinking he is dealing a fatal blow through temptation and ultimately through the execution on the cross. But in doing so, he falls for what is called the bait of apparent weakness.
That phrase, the bait of apparent weakness, is absolutely critical to understand. And we should clarify that this was not a deception by God. The framework is clear that God cannot lie. Instead, it was a sovereign judicial permission.
How does that work in practice? How do you set a trap without lying?
Think of it like a grandmaster playing a game of chess. The grandmaster might move their queen out into the open, leaving it seemingly completely unprotected. The grandmaster isn't lying. The board is entirely visible. But they are relying on the opponent's greed and aggression. The opponent gets so focused on taking the queen that they don't realize moving their piece opens them up to an immediate checkmate. God simply withheld full disclosure of the final outcome. He allowed pride to act according to its own destructive nature.
He gave it enough rope.
Exactly. He let the enemy overreach and exhaust itself against the truth. And when the enemy struck what he thought was the final fatal blow at Calvary, he actually crushed his own head. He used his own momentum to destroy himself.
Wow, one stone, two birds on a cosmic scale. It's the ultimate cosmic judo move, using the weight and aggression of the opponent to take them down. The failed overseer's own domain becomes the place of his undoing. His stronghold becomes the birthplace of the very thing that destroys him.
It is what the text calls grand justice. The original hidden rebellion doesn't get judged in secret, using a sheer display of overwhelming force. If God just vaporized the enemy, it might prove he is stronger, but it wouldn't resolve the moral accusation.
It wouldn't prove he's better.
Exactly. Instead, the rebellion receives an open, witnessed verdict. Pride is judged and defeated by humble love, made perfect in weakness, and raised from the very dust that the enemy despised. The cross didn't just save humanity, it disarmed the rulers and authorities, exposing them naked, and made a public spectacle of them before all creation.
A public spectacle. That ancient, lingering case that was echoing across the unfathomed ages is permanently closed. The heavens are cleansed, the accusations are completely silenced, and every mouth is stopped. Contempt is turned into a crown. A failed stewardship is replaced by perfect obedience.
And this brings us to the practical reality for the believer today, which is illustrated with a really brilliant analogy. The text states that the elder brother, referring to Christ, has already won the decisive victory. The enemy's head is crushed, even if the pieces haven't been finally removed from the board yet. And to explain how we operate in this reality, it brings up the story of David and Goliath.
This part is such a fantastic visual. The idea is that Christ striking the fatal blow at the cross is exactly like David beheading Goliath. The giant is dead. The impossible single combat victory is won. And so what do the rest of the believers do now?
They don't just sit there.
Right. We are like the Israelite army who stood terrified on the ridge, saw the giant fall, and then suddenly found their courage and rushed down to pursue the fleeing Philistines. We are still fighting. We are still dealing with the lingering spirits of Goliath, but the main battle, the decisive contest, is already decided.
It completely shifts the psychology of a spiritual struggle. Think about the difference between fighting a battle you desperately hope you don't lose versus mopping up the remnants of an army that is already completely broken.
It's night and day.
The text is emphatic here. Believers do not fight for victory, they fight from victory. They are pulling down strongholds, trampling serpents, and resisting lies, but they're doing it with liberated hearts. They are enforcing a triumph that has already been secured within and without. This raises an important question for you, the listener. How would your approach to the daily battles in your life change if you truly believed the decisive blow had already been struck?
If you weren't anxiously fighting to win the war, but simply enforcing a victory that was already yours.
Precisely.
That is a staggering shift in mindset. You aren't trying to earn the triumph. You are operating out of the triumph of the elder brother. The usurper's seat has been uprooted, making room for the Spirit to indwell. It's what the author calls a mighty household. Destined in love, redeemed through sacrifice, empowered by the Spirit, and destined to reign.
And it all loops back to the very beginning. The ultimate purpose of this entire cosmic drama isn't just about escaping sin or avoiding punishment. It's about returning to the Father.
The fountainhead.
Yes, the fountainhead. Outside of the Father, the soul is fractured, chaotic, and constantly wandering. But in Him, it finds rest. The framework points out that while Jesus is the way, many people unfortunately stop there. They see Him as a savior or a teacher, but they don't press through to the ultimate destination, which is the unshakable bedrock of the Father Himself.
So what does this all mean? If we synthesize this incredible journey we've mapped out today, we see the breathtaking arc of the human soul. We originate from the Father, we are redeemed through the Son, we are empowered by the Spirit, and ultimately we return to the Father forever.
And the conclusion drawn from this arc is profound.
Yeah.
Because of this massive cosmic effort from the unshakable bedrock through the tainted courtroom of earth to the public spectacle of the cross, every single redeemed life is of infinite worth.
Infinite.
Heaven rejoices over one repentant sinner because that one soul is a fresh, visible display of the Father's eternal purpose. You are an essential spark in this cosmic tapestry, and the meditation ends with this incredible vision of the future. A moment where even the Son Himself will be subject to the Father, so that God may be all in all.
All in all, it is a massive framework to take in, but it leaves you feeling deeply anchored.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot today about the bait of weakness and how fragile dust became the exact arena used to defeat ultimate pride. As you go about your day, look at the areas in your own life where you feel like contemptible dust, the places where you feel weakest, most vulnerable, or most fragile. What if those exact spots aren't your greatest liabilities? What if they're actually the perfectly designed arenas for your own greatest triumphs? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you leave feeling informed, grounded, and with a whole lot to mull over. Until next time.